So we're going direct Ruble, and then he's going to say, we'll expect the ILS 32 right with a Ruble transition. So we'll go to the departure arrival key, push that. Again, the logic is such that if you're more than half the distance to your destination, or 400 miles, whichever comes first, then it's going to give us the Moses Lake arrival page. If we were less than 400 miles, or half the distance, whichever comes first, it would give us the arrival page back to Boeing Field. Because it kind of knows what it thinks it knows what you want to look at. So if you just took off from Boeing Field and you're like 100 miles away, and you need to return, and you push DEP-R, you're going to get Boeing Field arrivals because it knows you're not more than halfway yet. And that's what you'd want if you have to return to Boeing Field. But in this case, if we're more than 400 miles or half the distance, whichever comes first, and you push the DEP-R key, you're going to get the Moses Lake arrivals, and that's what we want. Now, if this wasn't what we wanted, remember you always have an index prompt down here. Right now it's not there because we selected the ILS and there's an erase prompt there. But if you hadn't selected the ILS, this would say index. And then that allows you to get to the DEP-R index if this wasn't what you wanted. But in our case, this is what we want. So we have the Moses Lake arrival page, ILS 32 right, we select that. It says selected. It's not active yet because you haven't executed it. And then we want the transitions. In this case, we do want a transition. He said expect the 3-2 right approach with a Ruble transition. These are in alphabetical order, so you can see this is page 1. We go to page 2, go to next page. And that would be right here because you got page, again, 1 of 2, and there's more than these 4 transitions. And Ruble comes after plus, so we're going to go to the next page. And there's Ruble. There's Quint, Ruble, wipes. We want Ruble. So we select Ruble. And now we have the ILS 32 right, Ruble transition. They're both selected. No stars coming in. And then we can execute that. When you execute that, this will then say active. Didn't show that, but it would say active once you execute it. And by doing that, you're going to get Ruble going to Pelly, a procedure turn from Pelly outbound back to Pelly to the runway. So by selecting that transition, you get this segment right here, which is basically a course reversal from Ruble to Pelly, course reversal, and back for the ILS. So that's all going to be put in there as part of the selecting that transition. Now we'll get a clearance, we'll brief the approach obviously, and get a clearance to descend and maintain 4,000. And if we don't set 4,000 in the altitude window, as you approach your top of descent point, and you're within about 3 minutes of the top of descent point, and you haven't set a lower altitude, you'll get a message in the scratch pad saying reset MCP altitude. It's just a warning that, hey, you haven't set anything lower, and based on the profile that I've created for you, me the computer, I've created this profile for you, and if you want to start down to follow that profile, the top descent is in front of you and we're approaching it. So reset your MCP altitude window, the computer's telling you. Now, of course, if we haven't gotten a descent yet, we could request one from ATC. We don't have to start down at the top of descent. If ATC can't let us down, then we may have to wait for a little bit and then do more of an expedited descent. But generally, we could request, if we were at this position and he hadn't cleared us down, we could request a lower altitude from the center or whoever we're talking to. But this shows up anytime you're approaching the top of descent, you're about 3 minutes from it, and you haven't reset your MCP altitude window, you get this message. It's a high priority FMC message, so you get the message, you get a message light, and you'll get an ICAS message saying FMC message, or whatever it says. but I think this is a high priority FMC message. There's high priority messages in the scratchpad and there's low priority messages. The low priority would not give you the ICAST message on the alert screen. The high priority ones will. And you get this message light, but you also get an ICAST message telling you to look here. Look at the scratchpad. There's something in there that you need to know about. That's more of a high priority FMC message. And I think this one is high. So we're going to go ahead and set 4,000 in there. And then when the airplane reaches the top of descent point, it's going to automatically, then thrust is going to go to idle. And it will then be on the VNAV path into the ILS 32 right with the Ruble transition, taking into account all the constraints all the way down to your end of descent point. Now, in this case, one of two things. I'll probably do it both ways. We could be out here somewhere prior to the top of descent point, and maybe we get a report from ATC that expect moderate rime icing and clouds from 10,000 feet to the surface. Well, that would be an indication that if I'm expecting a nacelle anti-ice to be turned on, or I'm going to turn it on, one of the two, I can go to the descent forecast page to put the altitude that I'm expecting the anti-ice to be put on, or me to put it on, and I can put that in, and that will have the effect of moving this top of descent point back a little bit. So you'll see here that they say, here again, the clearance is going to be, or they're going to tell us, light to moderate rime icing and clouds reported from 10,000 feet. So we can go to our VNAV function key, push that. We're on the cruise page. We want to get to the descent page. Well, the descent page is page 3. There's 3 pages of the cruise pages. There's the climb, cruise, and descent. 1, 2, and 3. So in the case that we want the descent page, we're going to go to next page, and then that will take us to the descent page. It's not active yet, but it's inactive because we don't see active next to it. But on that page, we have a forecast tool here. And the caret means push it if you want to get it. So we're going to push the forecast. And then that will give us the ability to put in up to 4 altitudes and 4 winds in order to more accurately define our top of descent point or our descent profile. But there's also a thermal anti-ice on altitude here. And in our case, since he told us this, we're going to put in 10,000. So if you put in 10,000, it's going to have the effect of moving the top of descent point back, or in this case, we've already passed the top of descent point, and now we're putting this in, and what that does is the vertical deviation indicator will disappear while it's calculating this altitude, because again, remember the approach idle setting is going to be bumped up when you put on nacelle anti-ice, and because of that, it's going to take longer to get down. And because of that, it's going to calculate that, okay, you're above the path now, because we're expecting to turn this on at 10,000 feet, and now we're going to be high in the path. So we may have to help it here with some speed brakes in order to get back on the path, or increase the speed if we can. Depending on where we are here, we're still above 10,000, so we could increase the speed if we wanted to try to increase the rate of descent to get back on here. Or use speed brakes. So this is showing the vertical deviation path adjustment because we put this in. And I don't think there's an execute light when you do this. It's just you put it in, and it has the effect of recalculating the path. And there's no execute light with this. And now you'll see we've taken whatever measures we need to. It looks like maybe use speed brakes to get back on the path, and the path will show, again, it will recapture the path. By the way, when it does this, it's going to go into VNAV speed. It's going to come out of the path because now you're showing high on the path, and this will change from VNAV path to VNAV speed, indicating that you're controlling to a speed now and you're not on the path. So we're going to have to do something to get back on the path. And in our case, let's say we use speed brakes. And then when you get back on the path, you'll see this change to VNAV path as we recapture the path. And then we're back on the segment here to continue down. And of course, we said last week these are our deceleration circles. The first one is where you'll be right around 11,500, something like that, below 12,000. And you'll start to slow from your econ descent speed, which is a target speed. Remember, this isn't if you're on the path, this speed is allowed to vary, go up or go down. If it goes down too far, the auto throttle will engage. If it goes up too far, you'll get a drag required message, and you can use speed brakes or speed to get back on the path. But once you reach 10,000 feet, or actually below 12,000 feet, right around 11,500, something like that, it'll go ahead and bring the bug and slew it down to 240. And 240 is the speed that VNAV provides for us. It gives us a 10-knot buffer in case there's an unforecast tailwind that exists that the computer hasn't taken into account. And again, if you've let's say you put in the winds for the descent and that thermal anti-ice on altitude, it all helps to refine the path. And a lot of this is automated, so you can request it from your dispatch. They send it, they uplink it, and you just select it, and all that's put in for you. So it can very accurately define the path, even in the descent. That's not to say the speed won't increase. It still could decrease, because there's unforecast headwinds or tailwinds that you can run into, that weren't part of the forecast and part of the accuracy. The second circle is where you're going to get to 240 knots at 10,000 feet. So you can see we're right now at 10,880 feet, descending on the path. We started to slow down, but the second circle I can expect to be at 240 and just about at 10,000, ready to continue the descent to 4,000 at 240 knots. And here's the second circle. You can see we're at 240, descending through 10,000 on our way to 4,000. That's the end of deceleration. So they don't label these. Most of these little circles they do label. They'll say TD, top of descent, ED, end of descent, SC, step climb. You'll see most of these are labeled, but these two are not. They're just your deceleration circles. They come one after the other, so you know they're part of the deceleration process.